What's going on, guys? Welcome back to this week's second exclusive segment from the greatest podcast on turf. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Anthony.
And for this exclusive segment, we are going to be doing our stardom, sit-em list for the upcoming week, looking at players that, not the obvious guys. We're not going to tell you to start. I was going to say Christian McCaffrey, but
I'm not going to tell you to start Dalvin Cook.
I'm not going to tell you to start.
I'm not going to tell you that. That's stupid. Waste of time. We would just be wasting all of our time.
So we're looking into that, looking into guys that are, that flex or wide receiver 2, running back 2 range. If you're battling injuries and you need somebody to go to, listen to us and we'll tell you who.
Like I always say, we have the best fantasy football advice. Barney, why you barking? Best fantasy football advice around. Best football advice around. Best all-around NFL content on YouTube. You can find more genuine content creators than us. We're the best at what we do. I'm the best. Ryan's the best. We're the best. Most accurate. Our best bets, we had another rough week. We'll know our full score. As we're recording this, we'll know our full score tonight. So we'll be able to tell you our record in tomorrow's episodes. So be on the lookout for that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check out yesterday's waiver wire episode. Check out yesterday's week 3 recap podcast. Be on the lookout for tomorrow's best bets episode, for tomorrow's week 4 one-on-one wager, season long prediction wager series we got going on. Don't forget, we're not there today again. Have some other stuff going on, but don't forget to check out our sponsor, Little Italy Pizzeria. Tell them the greatest podcast on turf sent you and they'll take care of you. We have the best cheesesteaks, the best pizza around. They let us record there every week. We can't, because we can't record tonight because we have plans, but they still let us record there any other time anyway, whether they're open, closed, whatever. So show my family business some love. My dad, my Uncle Mike. Brand new website in the description, Facebook page in the description as well. And after a 2-minute long intro, let's get into our stardom sit-ems.
So I'm going to go ahead and start us off with my stardom quarterbacks. Now I picked 2 guys this week. One's a little bit of a higher end guy and one's a little bit of a lower end guy. The first guy, higher end, is Matt Stafford going against Arizona. This has all the makings to be a shootout. This could be Matt Stafford finishing as a top 5 quarterback this week. If you happen to draft Matt Stafford, definitely don't think about streaming another quarterback. Start him. If you happen to draft 2 quarterbacks and Matt Stafford is one of them, most likely start him. And the other guy I would like to mention is this is a 100% streaming quarterback option. This is bottom of the barrel, but you need somebody to go. Sammy D versus Dallas Cowboys. You see the jersey. I'm a Cowboys fan myself, and I'm an honest Cowboys fan that knows that our defense sucks.
Yep.
Sam Darnold rolling into town. Christian McCaffrey's not going to be rushing the football for him. So Sam Darnold's going to have a lot more pressure on him to throw the football. He has a pretty decent receiving core in DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, who has been disappointing, and Terrence Marshall, who has been a decent rookie so far. I could see the Panthers, putting up a shootout possibly with Dallas, just because I don't see how either team can stop each other. Sam Darnold's destroyed Dallas before when he was a Jet. He could probably destroy us as a Panther. So go ahead and start Matt Stafford if you have him. And if you need somebody really badly, go ahead and pick up Sammy Darnold versus the Dallas Cowboys.
From yesterday's waiver wire pickup episode, and as today's stardom sit-em episode goes on, it really sounds like you're buying into this Carolina Panthers hype.
I'm buying into Sam Darnold. He don't see ghosts no more.
So
he got LASIK like Jameis.
Knock on wood. But with that being said, I went with 2 more lower tier, middle of the pack, bottom of the barrel streamers this week. I mean, I could see the first guy, if you have him starting on your team, I see why. But the second guy as of late, yeah. So the first guy got Joe Burrow Thursday night against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We saw kind of Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals kind of roll through Pittsburgh. It was the first game since 2015 or 2019 that the Steelers didn't record a sack on defense against the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. That's bad. But Joe Burrow looked good against the Steelers defense. I know they were missing TJ Watt, but I'm not going to take it away from him. Joe Burrow, after last week's disappointing performance against the Bears, bounced back this week. They were missing T. Higgins. Tyler Boyd stepped up. Jamar Chase did his thing. Joe Mixon did the thing. And the offensive line stepped up, which was the biggest thing. I mean, and their defense looked good too. Helped Pittsburgh's kind of high-powered offense to, I don't remember the score, 14 points maybe. But yeah, I mean, this just goes to show, I mean, this is potentially what we could see if the Bengals continue, if their Bengals offensive line can continue to be good, be even decent and give Joe Burrow any time, this just goes to show that Cincinnati's high-power offense is the real deal. And with them playing a Jacksonville Jaguars team who really hasn't found their footing yet, had a tough schedule to start the season, but the Bengals have been kind of rolling. I think they're 2-1 right now, and Jacksonville's 0-3. Cincinnati has all the momentum in the world going home versus Jacksonville Thursday. So Joe Burrow, if you have him, start him. If you need to stream a quarterback, Joe Burrow may be the top quarterback available for this week.
That's fair.
Oh, dope. And second guy this week, he's a guy who's kind of been trending upwards. Somehow we didn't buy into hype, but I guess we were wrong.
No,
maybe.
They still suck.
Derek Carr traveling to the division rival Los Angeles Chargers this week. Chargers pulled off, I guess it would be called an upset against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. Out of nowhere, Kansas City did not look good. The Chargers looked good. Justin Herbert killed it. Mike Williams killed it. But the Raiders, they're on a roll. Beat Miami in overtime. They beat Pittsburgh last week. In week 1, they beat Baltimore. They're rolling. So, Derek Carr against the Chargers defense, who didn't look bad against the kind of like the Cowboys were week 1. They didn't look bad. They just scored a lot of points. And the way Derek Carr's been playing, it is a division game. Look for them to travel to the Chargers. This one could be one of those ones that they put up a lot of points because both offenses have seemed to be able to score. We saw the Chargers just put up 30 on Kansas City, and the Raiders have put up 30 in the past 3 games. So, that just goes to show this could be a high-scoring game. So, that being said, if you need a streamer quarterback or you picked him up off the waivers after week 1, Derek Carr, go ahead and start him this week.
I'm going to go ahead and jump to my sit-em quarterback. He was my stardom last week, but all of his receivers got hurt.
Yeah.
This is Daniel Jones against the New Orleans Saints. And the difference between the Atlanta Falcons defense and the Saints defense is pretty big. New Orleans is probably top 10, and the Atlanta was bottom 5.
Yeah.
And Daniel Jones still didn't have that good of a day. He got you about 17 fantasy points, which is okay. But look, Sterling Shepard, his top target's probably out. Slayton's hurt. Evan Ingram's always hurt.
Evan Ingram is the worst player. I saw a petition.
I know.
Yeah. I saw
Kenny Galladay hasn't been that great of a fit for the Giants, and now they're going against a New Orleans team that is, really good. They got Lattimore at corner, good linebacking core, good defensive line.
The Patriots in that
just exposed the Patriots. I would not feel comfortable starting Danny Dimes. I know he's been decent so far, but now he gets a pretty big task in New Orleans, and I would not. He would not be on any of my teams. He won't be on any of my daily fantasy teams. I am completely staying away from Giants against New Orleans.
Yes. If you literally don't have any other option at quarterback than Daniel Jones this week, you probably shouldn't be playing fantasy football because you messed up somewhere. Or you're just in a league with a lot of people and you got dealt the crap end of the stick with quarterbacks.
Or you're in a super flex league.
But with that being said, I had 2 sit-em quarterbacks this week. The first one is Kirk Cousins versus Cleveland. I know the Vikings just beat the Seahawks. They put up a lot of points on them, but Cleveland's defense finally found their footing this week against the Chicago Bears offense. I know the Bears offense isn't all that, but the biggest thing is, yes, the Vikings probably have a better offense than the Bears do, but the Browns defense finally found their footing. I think they had a total of 9 sacks, and the Vikings offensive line isn't all that great. They struggled at the beginning of the season. They kind of struggled against Seattle. So yeah, Kirk Cousins up sitting them this week. The Browns are on that momentum train. They finally seem to put it all together against the Bears last week. I know, again, it's the Bears. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. It's the Bears. But I think Kirk Cousins is terrible. I know, unfortunately. But I believe Kirk Cousins sucks, and I believe the Cleveland Browns are just going to roll through the Vikings in Cleveland this week. So Kirk Cousins is my first sit-em. Then my second sit-em quarterback this week is Carson Wentz versus the Miami Dolphins. Listen, the Colts last week, who did they just play? They played the Titans. Titans defense is not good. Then Carson Wentz only scored 7.8 fantasy points, didn't throw a single touchdown, didn't rush for a single touchdown.
I thought he threw for one. No?
I don't think so.
Pascal didn't catch one?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Because I checked earlier and I didn't see a touchdown in any of the columns. So yeah, I think he threw 169 passing yards total. The final was like 38-16. So I mean, and they're playing a Miami Dolphins defense, it hasn't looked very good, but I'll tell you right now, they're better than the Titans defense. And the Colts offense isn't very good. Quentin Nelson went out of the game early with an ankle injury, missing their top lineman again. Jonathan Taylor really hasn't found his footing, and neither has Carson Wentz. So with that being said, if you have to start Carson Wentz this week, I'm sorry. Not good.
That's fair. I wouldn't start him either. I'm going to go ahead and jump to my first running back start of the week. That is Zack Moss against the Houston Texans. We saw last week Zack Moss lit it up. You want all parts that you can have of this Buffalo Bills offense. They're one of the top scoring offenses in football. And Zack Moss looks like he's going to be the starting guy. He's going to be the guy for Buffalo. And now they're going up against the Houston Texans defense. That absolutely sucks. They just, Chuba Hubbard had himself a day last week against them. Week 2, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt had themselves a day against them. I forgot who the Jacksonville who sucks. Anyways, Zack Moss. I'm starting Zack Moss if I picked him up in fantasy football, especially if one of my guys is hurt. Dalvin Cook, he might be banged up another week. You don't know. A lot of running backs are getting banged up. Josh Jacobs has been hurt. David Montgomery, no, not him. Darrell Henderson was banged up. So a lot of running backs are getting hurt. If you need to pick somebody up and start them, I would feel 100% confident in Zack Moss against the Houston Texans.
I agree 100% with that one. And then do you have another one or no?
Yeah, my next starting running back, another waiver pickup of this week, is Chuba Hubbard against the Dallas Cowboys. Starting running backs are hard to do just because I'm not going to tell you to start, Dalvin Cook. It's obvious. Kamara, it's dumb.
Yeah.
But I will tell you to start Chuba Hubbard. Like I said, if you're battling these injury decisions or you went a zero running back approach and you have nobody, if you have, I don't know, if you had Melvin Gordon, I would start Chuba Hubbard over him, probably.
Yeah.
Going against the Dallas Cowboys defense that isn't very good. It's really not hard. There's not much to explain. DeMarcus Lawrence is out. The linebacking core has been banged up, sucks.
Michael Parsons
is good.
Trayvon Diggs has been really good.
That's kind of where we ran out. Yep, that's what I was going to say. Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch have been kind of a laughing stock over this past year.
Yeah.
The rest of our defensive line, can barely name them. One's a rookie. Randy Gregory's good when he's playing. But with that being said, I would feel pretty confident starting Zack Moss, probably number 1, and then Chuba Hubbard is number 2.
Yeah, like both of those. Those are both guys that we talked about on our waiver wire video yesterday. Link in the description. Be sure to check it out. Be on the lookout for all of our other content this week. We're the best on YouTube. We're the best at what we do. I had 2 starting running backs this week. First guy, one maybe kind of getting too cute, but I mean, I don't think so. It's DAndre Swift at Chicago. We just saw Kareem Hunt go on a killing spree for the Chicago Bears defense. We saw DAndre Swift go on a great game tear against the Ravens defense last week where they almost upset the Ravens. So I'm buying into, come on, Bonnie. Sorry, my dog world. But yeah, we got DAndre Swift this week traveling to Chicago in a division game, but DAndre Swift has been very good this season so far. Yeah, Jamal Williams has been seeing the early game snaps as it's gone on, but I mean, I'm buying in the hype. I have DAndre Swift. I bought into the hype this fantasy offseason. If you guys have been watching us, so you know I'm buying into this hype. I think the Chicago Bears need to get rid of Matt Nagy before they'll be able to take that next step forward. And with that being said, DAndre Swift, he is a start this week at Chicago 100%, just because what we saw Kareem Hunt come in and do last week, 2 days ago against them. I think he had 21 fantasy points, and I mean, Nick Chubb only had 8, but that was just because Kareem Hunt got going.
DAndre Swift is turning into one of them guys where you can start every week. He's starting to establish himself as a top running back in football.
Yeah.
So
just like I said, and you stayed away from him.
Yep, because I stay away from Detroit.
Fair enough. Yep, and then the second guy this week, Trey Sermon, going at home versus the Seattle Seahawks. It seems as though Trey Sermon is finally in that role we all thought he was going to be in at some point this season, running back 1. I don't know who their other running backs are anymore. Mostert's hurt. Jermichael Hasty's hurt. So it's Trey Sermon. I saw Deebo Samuel was getting some plays at running back. Aiyuk was working in the jet sweep game. But Trey Sermon, he's a guy who I'm comfortable starting against the Seahawks this week. We saw what Alexander Mattison just did to him on Sunday as well. Alexander Mattison had himself a day. He always does when Dalvin Cook goes out, but that's beside the point. The 49ers offense, they looked pretty good against the Packers last night. What am I going to say? And the 49ers, it seems as though they're trying to get more dynamic on offense. They put Trey Lance in more of the plays, trying to get the play action game going, the quarterback run game going. So, I mean, Trey Sermon's one of those guys. He's kind of a biggie. He's one of Chris Collinsworth said it last night. He's a big, fast guy. That's pretty much what he said. For you. Yeah. So, I mean, he's a guy who they probably are comfortable with putting in on the goal line if it's not Kyle Juszczyk. And he's a guy who they're not afraid to throw it to as well. And pretty soon we may be starting to see Trey Lance as a starter by the looks of it. I mean, Jimmy G hasn't looked horrible like I thought, but I mean, they've been getting Trey Lance more and more involved. They put him in on the goal line right before halftime. He came in a few more times, and they're playing a division rival, so they're going to want to pull out all the stops to try and get that win. So Trey Sermon this week. He could be another guy who's also on the waivers. Some guys I know stashed him toward the end of fantasy drafts, middle of the rounds. But if Trey Sermon's available, I recommend going to get him against the Seattle Seahawks this week, whose defense hasn't looked particularly good this year.
That's fair. And I'll go ahead and jump into my running back sit-ems. I got kind of 1.5, 2-ish type of deal. The first one is the Ravens running backs versus Denver. Essentially, I thought Tyson Williams was the guy. He's been averaging 6.5 yards per carry, and then he goes in and gets 4 carries or something like that.
Yeah.
They didn't give him the ball, and they barely beat the Lions. Kind of serves Harbaugh right. He sucks. When your running back's averaging 6.5 yards a carry, and then you go and get the ball to Freeman or whoever you gave the ball to, sorry to hear that. I think you personally lose your job. You're just as bad as your brother in Michigan. You don't really win.
Tell me how you really feel. Dang.
With that being said, that is my first sit-em. You cannot trust any Ravens running back in fantasy football. And they're playing against the Denver defense, who's pretty good. They just shut out the Jets, and they've been on a tear lately. They hang their hat in the secondary, but when you hang your hat in the secondary, you can load the box. So, With that being said, I'm not confident in Ravens running backs. And then this next guy I'm sitting is a 100% matchup play, and sucks for this guy next to me, and that is Damien Harris versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's a couple reasons here. One thing that Damien Harris does have going for him is James White's hurt, so he's going to get a lot more touches. Then there's a couple things going against him. First being, Tampa Bay shuts down everybody. That's not named Sony Michel, it seems like.
Yeah.
But no, they shut down everybody. I wouldn't feel confident starting him against his defense. And then the next reason is kind of how the game is going to play out. In my head, I envision Tom Brady coming back and torturing him. Personally, I don't see this game being close. And if this game isn't close, it's going to be ugly. I could honestly see Mac Jones having some turnovers.
Again.
Not scoring a lot of points.
Again.
Throwing in the fourth quarter. Throwing picks in the fourth quarter.
Again.
And game script does not look good for Damien Harris against Tampa. He's been decent so far. He's been the guy in New England, but there's a couple red flags for me against Tampa where he could potentially be a huge bust, not score any touchdowns, not get you that many yards. I'm going to be staying away from him. It's going to be a bad day in New England.
Listen, Sunday night is going to be a very emotional night for me. If you want to hear my full thoughts on Sunday night in the Patriots versus Buccaneers game, be on the lookout for tomorrow's podcast. I'm going to be doing an in-depth preview of this game, in-depth thoughts on the game, in-depth thoughts on Tom Brady and the Patriots and the whole situation. With that being said, I have one kind of 3 sit-em running backs this week, and it's the entire Houston Texans running back core. We saw them Thursday night against the Panthers, couldn't establish a run game. We don't really know who the running back one is. Mark Ingram had a solid start to the season. He didn't see much playing time the other night. He seems to kind of fell off a cliff. With that being said, they are playing against a Buffalo Bills defense who has shut down every running back they've played against. They shut down Najee week 1, Myles Gaskin week 2, shut down Antonio Gibson and McKissick yesterday. So, I mean, and the Texans suck, to be honest. The Texans are terrible. And when they don't have a Sherlock running back one,
when they don't have Tyrod Taylor, they suck.
Yeah. With that being said, we don't know who the running back one is. So if you have Mark Ingram, Phillip Lindsay, or David Johnson for some reason,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and you probably shouldn't start him this week. Buffalo put a major emphasis on defensive line and pass rush and run defense in the offseason, and it's proved to have worked so far. So I'm sitting the entire Houston Texans running back core this week. And now for my stardom wide receivers of the week. Here's two guys, kind of ugly names to say, I know. I know you're not going to like his first one, and probably even the second one.
First one's all right. Second one, no.
But I like them. So the first start this week, I'm going to wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. traveling to Minnesota to play the Vikings. Odell saw about 9, I think he caught 5 of 9 targets for a little less than 100 yards receiving this week. Seemed to pick up right where they left off last year before Odell tore his ACL. Odell was killing it. I remember him last year was torching the Dallas Cowboys defense. He rushed for a touchdown. He threw a touchdown. He had 100 yards receiving that game. And him and Baker are kind of picking up where they left off. Odell's a sole receiver in that receiving room. It's Odell, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Njoku, and Austin Hooper. I mean, in theory, it ain't horrible, but it's kind of bad. And they're going to a Minnesota defense whose secondary has showed some flashes. I think they let DK Metcalf do his thing. They shut down Tyler Lockett, though. But, I mean, it's a favorable matchup for Odell. Pat Pete don't got nothing on Odell. Cam Dantzler sure doesn't have anything on Odell. So, I mean, I have Odell this week, and I'm probably going to start him. There's a receiver 2/high-end flex play this week, Odell Beckham Jr. And the second one, I know what you're going to say. But yesterday night showed a lot. Brandon Aiyuk versus Seattle, I know. Brandon Aiyuk he should have had 2 touchdowns. He dropped one, caught another one. I think 49ers really couldn't get Deebo Samuel going. Deebo Samuel had a couple drops, maybe even a fumble. Kittle couldn't really get going either. But, I mean, Brandon Aiyuk saw a lot of targets from Jimmy G, especially down in the red zone. They got him back going finally. I wouldn't really say it was a breakout game, but it was the biggest game of the year. Brandon Aiyuk kind of was just buried on the depth chart. He wasn't really doing much to start, but yesterday against the tough Packers defense, he got going. Like I said, he had 3-4 red zone targets. I think he finished with a total of 7 to 9 targets, which is more than he had all games. I mean, it's pretty much, I would feel a little bit more comfortable starting Brandon Aiyuk in fantasy this week after what we saw from him last night. And like I said, they're going to Seattle, whose defense really hasn't been all that. They've given up a lot of points. They're 1-2. Their secondary is a major question mark, and this one's probably going to be another high scorer for them. So, I mean, they're going to have to put up points, and if push comes to shove, Brandon Aiyuk is going to be in the game, getting targets, getting catches. So, I mean, I'm starting Brandon Aiyuk this week.
That's fair. I'll go ahead and jump into my 2 stardom. I went with 1 wide receiver and 1 tight end here. I'm going to start with the wide receiver first. Jamar Chase up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. All off season, we've heard that Jamar Chase is going to be a stud. And then preseason came, and then Jamar Chase is a bust. But now, through 3 weeks, he has about 4 touchdowns, 220 yards, and he's been Joe Burrow's favorite target. T. Higgins was banged up last week. If he's banged up again, I could see Jamar Chase having himself a day against this Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Jacksonville Jaguars team, who has proven to not be very good. Urban Meyer has proven to be very bad. They just traded away their best corner in C.J. Henderson.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who they had the corner, really.
Shaquille Griffin.
Who got burned by Marquez Callaway. I get it was preseason, I get it. Brandon Cooks burned them. I don't know who else they played, but I'm sure they got burned by that play.
Denver and Arizona.
Cortland Sutton and
Christian Kirk and AJ Green.
Yeah. So everybody's having themselves a day against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I expect the same for Jamar Chase. He's had a touchdown a game. Last game he had 2. 4 touchdowns, 3 games, 220 yards. Joe Burrow's favorite target. The O-line looked pretty good against Pittsburgh. I could see them looking pretty good against Jacksonville. And Jamar Chase having a big day.
Yeah.
Now the next guy I'm going to talk about, and I'm not sure he's going to like this one, the tight end, and it is his revenge game. He's coming home to New England. Gronkowski. Now, most likely, in the draft, you took Rob Gronkowski as a tight end 2 flyer guy just because nobody expected Rob Gronkowski to be a top 10 tight end every week.
No.
It was more just a shot in the dark. You need, a tight end because you waited a long time. You ended up with somebody like Jared Cook or Gerald Everett, who wasn't very good, but you took Rob Gronkowski. Well, I could have said Tyler Higbee, but he's been decent. Tonyan, who hasn't done much. So you ended up with Rob Gronkowski as your tight end 2, and you've seen over these past 3 weeks that he's done pretty good. Last week, I know he only had 55 yards, but as a tight end in today's fantasy football league, that's really good actually.
Yeah.
So if you're having 2 tight ends and one of them is like Gerald Everett or
Jared Cook,
go ahead and start Rob Gronkowski and feel pretty good about doing it. Coming to New England, this is Brady versus Belichick. I've always been Team Brady. I think there's 2 teams. I think Brady is the man. Belichick is not. So go ahead and start Rob Gronkowski pretty confidently.
Like I said, if you want my full thoughts, tomorrow's podcast will be going in depth. But there's 3 guys left I got to talk about real quick. Not going to go into much detail. We touched on him more yesterday and at the beginning of this episode. Sit-em wide receiver Robbie Anderson. For reasons as such, Terrence Marshall only played 2 snaps less than him, and Robbie Anderson only had 2 targets against the Houston Texans defense. And I had 2 sit-em tight ends. You kind of touched on one. Big Robert Tonyan at home versus the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. Steelers have shut down tight ends all season, even when Devin Bush was out. When TJ Watt was out, they still shut down Darren Waller last week. Robert Tonyan got shut down against Fred Warner, and Devin Bush and Minkah Fitzpatrick are good coverage as well against tight ends. They shut down Darren Waller, they shut down whoever the Bills tight end is, and they shut down CJ Uzomah yesterday, which ain't saying much. But yeah, I'm sitting Robert Tonyan this week because the Steelers' defense is good against tight ends. And here's a guy who I know for a fact if you drafted him way too high, Kyle Pitts. Sitting him this week against Washington. Washington, another defense who has shut down opposing tight ends. They just shut down the Bills tight end. They shut down
Dawson Knox lost somebody.
Dawson Knox had a lucky Moss. Who else has Washington played? They shut down whoever the Giants tight end was, and they shut down.
Why are we having a blank here?
Drawing a blank. Who'd they play week 1?
I was gonna say Giants.
No, they played the Giants week 2 Thursday.
Who did they play week 1?
I don't know.
The Chargers.
The Chargers, yeah, they shut down Jared Cook. And Kyle Pitts didn't see a single target until halfway through the second half against the Giants defense, who lost Blake Martinez early in that game. So who was guarding Kyle Pitts? I don't know. It was the second option because Adoree Jackson was out, and I'm sure James Bradbury was guarding Calvin Ridley. And Kyle Pitts not seeing a target until about midway through the third quarter, early second half. It's not good. Because I know you drafted Kyle Pitts way too high, like we said not to. So if you have Kyle Pitts, I'm sorry, and I'm telling you to sit him this week because he has not looked good. Why they drafted him, I don't know. That's a conversation we touched on more on yesterday's podcast. Link in the description to check that out. Thank you guys for watching.
I have 2 sit-ems. You skipped me.
Whoopsies.
With that being said, first one is Robert Woods. First 3 weeks,
Yeah.
he was wide receiver 46, 44, 61. That's not good for your top 5 round draft pick.
No, it's not.
And this isn't drafters' fault. This is just how the cookie crumbled.
That's a good analogy.
Matt Stafford, he loves his boy Cooper Kupp.
And Deshaun Jackson.
And D Jackson, Van Jefferson, and Tyler Higbee. And I know who you don't love, Robert Woods.
Yeah.
So with that being said, probably sit him until he, steps it up. He may step it up. He might not. We don't really know. The next is a group of wide receivers, and it's the Steelers wide receivers. They're banged up and are playing against a pretty good passing defense. I know they got Kevin King, but Green Bay is still a pretty good passing defense. Like I said, Deontay Johnson's banged up. Juju's banged up. If Claypool's the only healthy one, I'd consider it. But like he said, Debo struggled against Green Bay last night. Green Bay has a pretty good passing defense. You don't want to start Deontay Johnson, who's hurt. You don't want to start Juju, who could be hurt.
He sucks.
If they both play, it could just be a messy type of range that you don't want to get into, in my opinion. If Deontay and Juju are both out, you might have to start Claypool just because of a volume standpoint. But if they both play, it's just a messy, ugly situation that I don't want to be a part of.
Absolutely not. And now I think that wraps it up. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out all of our content from this week. Yesterday's waiver wire episode, yesterday's week 3 takeaways. Be on the lookout for tomorrow's episodes, our best bets episode, and our week 4 predictions, where I'm going to go in depth about the Patriots versus the Bucks and all things New England and all the games. So check that out. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Peace.